The Young Turks up next. Anna Kasparian, Jake Euchre. Go check them out. We'll see you guys tomorrow on Friday.
I'm a little teapot, short and stout. Here's my handle, here's my spout. When I get all steamed up, hear me shout. Tip me over and pour me out. I'm a very special teapot. Yes, it's true. Here's an example of what I can do. I can turn my handle into a spout, tip me over, and pour me out.
Woo! It's up!
All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian with you guys. Full and exciting show as we have every day. We're going to give you the truth and the news as honestly and independently as we can, and take on Republicans and Democrats. So it's a very normal day in America, filled with the ridiculous lives of Americans and politics. So bear with us as we tell you the absurdities of the news. All right, Anna.
Well, we begin with an important anniversary that people are trying to now do some revisionist history on, and that's the Iraq War. Let's talk about it.
Had we known at the time that Iraq had actually gotten rid of all of its weapons of mass destruction and discontinued its nuclear program, I don't think the president could have gone to war, even if he'd wanted to. I don't think you would have had the support from the Congress of the United States to go to war, in which case the war would not have happened.
Stephen Hadley was the national security advisor under the George W. Bush administration. And during a recent interview on CNN, he repeated the lie that the United States government was genuinely under the assumption that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, which justified its preemptive illegal war. However, there's a lot of evidence indicating otherwise. And the reason why we're talking about this now is because of the fact that it is the 20-year anniversary of the Iraq invasion. And there are a number of people attempting to do revisionist history on that war, and it's important to know the facts. Now, going back to what Hadley said there, keep in mind he's making excuses for that disastrous decision to do the preemptive war. And when Colin Powell during the Bush administration testified before the United Nations to argue that there absolutely were weapons of mass destruction, he knew that that wasn't necessarily true. His team ignored the objections coming from the State Department's own intelligence gathering division to some of the material contained in his speech. This is BS. He reportedly erupted just 3 days before giving the speech as he looked over the evidence prepared for him. It had been less than 2 years since Powell had said that Hussein hadn't developed any significant capacity or capability, I should say, with respect to weapons of mass destruction, and even less since he told the Senate that he hadn't been terribly successful in pursuing a program of WMDs.
Yeah, so another context here is, of course, the war with Ukraine. And the comment that most angered me, as usual, comes from so-called journalist Jonathan Karl from ABC. We'll get to that in a little bit. Look, guys, the Ukraine war was started by Russia. Okay, there's no question about it. They did aggression. I think we should help Ukraine. The degree to which we should spend money helping Ukraine is a very open question. Okay, and right now we spent a ton of money, and these defense contractors get rich off of it, and that's why we're so animated by helping our brothers in Ukraine. So keep it real on that. This Iraq war was an absolute disaster. They're now doing complete revisionist history. The people who started that war was us, unmistakably us. Don't lie about it. If you're in the news business, you're supposed to tell the truth and be honest with your audience. Saddam Hussein did not attack us on 9/11. They did not have weapons of mass destruction, and we knew both of those facts. Colin Powell lied about it, Dick Cheney lied about it, Rumsfeld, Bush, they all lied about it. But the news business is in the business of protecting the powerful. So they all pretend, oh golly gee, nobody knew that they didn't have weapons of mass destruction. And you all knew he didn't attack us on 9/11. Why are we randomly attacking another country? We were the aggressors. We were an empire. And we did not do it so that the American people could gain from it. We did it so corporations that contribute to all these crooks, all these corrupt politicians could benefit from it.
That's exactly right. And it's so important to talk about the costs, not just the financial costs of that war. In fact, even though it was nearly $3 trillion, that pales in comparison to the human costs of that war. Remember, the support for the war was entirely manufactured through a false premise that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction, and now it's abundantly clear that he did not, okay, that we were lied to, but the goalposts have moved to, well, we got rid of an evil dictator. You know, that's all that matters. We got rid of an evil dictator. Real quick, I want to go back to some of the comments from the Bush administration at the time, starting with Dick Cheney, who was quoted in August 26th of 2002 saying, simply stated, there is no doubt that Saddam Hussein now has weapons of mass destruction. There is no doubt he is amassing them to use against our friends, against our allies, and against us. By the way, the United Nations weapons inspectors also failed to find any hard evidence indicating that there were weapons of mass destruction. But nonetheless, the preemptive war happened. The Bush administration, hold on real quick. Also, you're gonna love this because I remember one of the things that attracted me to TYT was that Cenk ranted about this so aggressively at the time. The Bush administration also manufactured consent for that war by making it seem as though Iraq was behind 9/11. Bush himself raised the specter of nuclear annihilation and falsely insinuated that Iraq was connected to the 9/11 attacks by discussing the supposed links between Hussein's government and Al-Qaeda. Iraq played no role in the 9/11 attack. Go ahead, Cenk.
Yeah, so look, this is what drives me crazy about the mainstream media. And by the way, partly the right wing, it drives them crazy as well. Dick Cheney is a giant liar. So yeah, he's right winger, and at the time, all the right wingers loved him. They loved that he was Darth Vader. They loved how evil he was and how he brought back torture, etc. Right? They didn't love the warrantless wiretapping. Okay, so I'm being honest, that nobody liked that. The right didn't like it, the left didn't like it. But they liked the torture, they liked bombing Muslims, etc. Okay, but Dick Cheney is just as big a liar as Donald Trump, and his lies were more consequential. Okay, you will never hear that in mainstream media because Dick Cheney is an establishment politician. He believes in the robbery that it goes on. They give all the money to corporations and the media loves it. That's why they love liars like Dick Cheney. And by the way, the UN weapons inspectors, let's be clear about that because that is also misleading every time. Saddam did not kick out the UN weapons inspectors. We did.
Right.
We did because we were afraid that they might find that there were no weapons of mass destruction.
Right, exactly. And I love that you brought up the consequences of people like Dick Cheney, because I feel that during the Trump administration, because of how vicious his rhetoric is, that led to the laundering of the reputations of Bush administration officials, people like Dick Cheney, people like Bush. It is wrong to launder what they did. They committed war crimes. Thousands of American soldiers died. We're going to get into the numbers of Iraqis who died as well, and the human toll in general, right? So David Frum, by the way, the man who coined the phrase "axis of evil" and was Bush's speechwriter, recently wrote a piece in The Atlantic trying to do his own revisionism in regard to the war in Iraq. And this is what he wrote. He starts off with some information about the human toll. More than 4,000 US and coalition troops were killed. Thousands more were gravely wounded. Hundreds of thousands of Iraqis died violent deaths. The war cost American taxpayers at least $1 trillion. $1 trillion is on the low end of the spectrum. Some reports indicate that it was as much as $3 trillion, and perhaps double that once the long-term costs of care for wounded veterans are all factored in. But then he immediately pivots to, as we make our appraisals at the 20-year mark, we need to consider another assessment, because he's decided to move the goalposts. Where would the United States, Iraq, and the region be today if the US had left Saddam in place in 2003? If I recall correctly, Saddam was armed by the United States at one point.
100%. In fact, there's a picture of Saddam Hussein shaking hands with Donald Rumsfeld, as Donald Rumsfeld sold him weapons. Amazingly, Saddam used some of those weapons against Iran and then got rid of them when we put in sanctions, etc. We all knew that. Rumsfeld knew it, Cheney knew it. Anyway, look guys, they use a lot of BS excuses. Oh, he was an evil dictator. Well, you can argue Xi Jinping is a dictator in China and has concentration camps filled with Uyghur Muslims, right? And so that is a terrible, terrible thing. Should we invade China because they have a dictator in charge?
Saudi Arabia?
Or Saudi Arabia, our beloved ally, right? Of course not. That doesn't justify an invasion. It's an absurdity, but it's never challenged in the mainstream media, or by the way, right-wing media. Sean Hannity, Laura Ingraham, almost every host on Fox News, almost every host in right-wing media loved that Iraq war. Now they're a bunch of liars pretending that they were against it.
100%.
Come on.
100%. I remember that era so well. Now let's actually hear from people who were part of that illegal invasion, including private contractors like Blackwater. 10 years ago, TYT covered a story about what Blackwater was up to in Iraq. The video that we're about to show you is difficult to watch because it shows a complete disregard for the lives of civilians. But it's important to remember what that war really looked like and what Blackwater was up to as they were in Iraq. Let's watch.
What are you looking at, punk? You got a problem?
Yeah, they're looking at you rolling through their town like a madman. The whole idea is we're the big bad Americans. The laws don't apply to us. Get out of our way. And then, gee, I wonder why the Iraqis hated us. You're not convinced yet? Wait till you see the second video. Right in the beginning, one of these guys is gonna run over a civilian, and then everybody's just gonna roll on by like nothing happened. And they just keep on rolling.
So that was going on. Let's also not forget what happened in Abu Ghraib, which was where Iraqi prisoners were being held by US soldiers. They were tortured, they were beaten, they were humiliated, they were made to be completely naked and pose in incredibly degrading photos. There's more. There's also the human toll on the American side, the soldiers who had multiple deployments to Iraq, and we should hear from them. Let's watch.
Corporal Heisel finished one more deployment, leaving 2 weeks after his wife gave birth to their first child.
I always had a certain amount of guilt while I was over there for being there at all, for leaving my ride or die lady back here with the kid, you know, and going and doing this.
Though he still plays his guitar, the tune is different.
I was staring. Once you start to question why you're there, you can't stop doing it. Every mission, everything we did, kicking doors in, disrupting people's lives, bagging people's heads, bagging a dude's head and dragging him out of a house while his kids are standing there screaming. For what? What are we doing?
About 13% of the US homeless population consists of veterans. Permanent PTSD is just high, like it's overrepresented among the veteran community because of these multiple deployments. I mean, again, to argue, no, you know, the Iraq war, not so bad actually, is one of the most insane revisionist points anyone can make. And I just want to give you Eli Lake's piece as well in commentary, where he decided to reflect back on the Iraq war. And he says, the Iraq war 20 years later, it wasn't the disaster everyone now says it was.
Oh, yeah. Of course. So the band marches on. So look, guys, we showed you the video of them running over the guy. That's, of course, the least of it. Hundreds of thousands dead. Okay, and when the propaganda done by usually American media is like, oh, there's combatants and then some few collateral damage we didn't intend. No, we killed tons and hundreds of thousands of civilians, okay? Babies, grandmothers, aunts, uncles. Oh, they say, oh, we didn't intend to hit them with our cruise missiles. I mean, we hit them over and over and over and over and over again. We murdered all those people, but we didn't intend it, really? Well, then Chelsea Manning released the Apache helicopter video, and that's where our guys take out a bunch of journalists, okay? They thought, well, I can't tell if it's a camera or a weapon. They're not anywhere near American troops, but who cares? Let's kill them. And they killed them. But then the worst yet, first responders come to take them to the hospital and they killed them. Okay, and what happened? Chelsea Manning goes to jail, but the guys who did the killings or who ordered the killings, none of them had a single consequence. Because this machine, this corporate machine that has been set up, doesn't care about Iraqi civilians. They don't care that, oh, now they're in a great democracy. Get the hell out of here, okay? Or the American people, over 50,000 killed and maimed in that war that were Americans. Yes, get their legs blown off, head injuries, et cetera, et cetera. And guess how much we spent in Iraq and Afghanistan? About $5 trillion. That's $5 trillion that could have gone to building schools, giving us universal health care, taking care of your family, paid family leave. You know how much we spent in Afghanistan alone? 300 million a day for nearly 20 years. 300 million a day. And where did it go? To private contractors, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, all of these giant defense contractors, including Dick Cheney's former company, Halliburton. But that is a grave offense to mention in mainstream media because now Liz Cheney is a sweetheart of MSNBC, And by the way, so is Nicole Wallace, spokesperson for George W. Bush.
Yep.
And all the people who started the war are all over Fox News and CNN and MSNBC. Hillary Clinton voted for the war. Joe Biden voted for the war. John Kerry voted for the war. Why is it only the Democrats who voted for the war are the presidential candidates. Because if a person who didn't vote for the war goes into a Democratic primary, the mainstream press rips their head off politically and says, oh, that's a radical outsider, that's terrible. You have to have people who are moderate like the American people and wanted that war. Except nobody wanted that war, and now the American people despise that war. But we still have David Frum. Who's David Frum that Anna quoted earlier? David Frum is a neocon that was one of the principal architects of the Iraq War and now beloved by mainstream media because he said one or two critiques of Donald Trump.
He popularized the phrase axis of evil, which included Iraq, North Korea, and Iran. And the argument was that these three countries were aligned with each other to essentially destroy the West, to destroy America, which obviously didn't play out that way. But it was meant to sow fear in the minds of Americans in order to manufacture consent for the illegal war that we engaged in Iraq.
Yeah, so do we have the Jonathan Karl clip or should I summarize it?
You can summarize it.
Yeah, so he's on with Marianne Williamson. He's one of the main reporters for ABC. And he says, well, Iraq is very different because it was not a war of conquest. Oh, please. No, Jonathan Karl, you obviously don't know anything about politics. You should retire, but let me explain why. Okay, because Jonathan, it was the American government does not serve the American people. They serve their donors. It was not a conquest for us. No, America didn't get the oil. America didn't get the country. America didn't get anything. We lost treasure. We didn't gain treasure. But it was a conquest for the companies that got that $5 trillion. It was the world's biggest conquest. And what do you do every day? Either you're totally ignorant of it. It's like, oh, the hundreds of millions of dollars they funnel to the politicians affects their votes? Oh, really? No, they're honorable gentlemen having honest debates, right? And then the people that gave them the money, they then funnel trillions of dollars to. No, that's gotta be a coincidence. No, that's the conquest. And unfortunately, the conquered are not the Iraqis, it's us.
We got to take a break. When we come back, another pretty stunning story from The Intercept in regard to the FBI installing spies among activist groups. But the spy got caught, and we have all the details of that story and more. Don't miss it. We'll be right back.
All right, back on TYT. Let me read some comments from the member section on TYT.com. And we read their comments the most often. They're our longest members usually. And we love it if you sign up on the website, tyt.com/join. Shadows writes in, happy Thursday, Rebels. Mace 454321 writes in, if they thought Iraq actually had WMDs, there's no way the US would have invaded. The consequence of nuclear war is way too high. So who else is an axis of so-called axis of evil that David Frum created? Iran and North Korea. Why didn't we invade Iran earlier? Well, it's a much bigger fight. It's a mess, and I don't want anybody invading Iran or North Korea. But they were worried that Iran had uranium, etc. And then when we took away their uranium, all of a sudden then we tore up the contract and thought about invading them. Because now we're sure that they don't have weapons of mass destruction. North Korea, on the other hand, develops like 6 to 8 nukes while Donald Trump is in office because Trump fell in love with Kim Jong-un. And of course we're not gonna attack North Korea, they might have nukes. So their hypocrisy is preposterous. Okay, Chocolate Addicted Dragon says, May show with a couple of top dragons of truth. Salt and Justice Dragon are here to fuel the roaring of progressive thunder. Healthy chocolate to sweeten the news of my dragon friends and fam. Enjoy. Well, thank you, we appreciate that. Shy Coltrane 42 says, Judith Miller and Thomas Friedman were part of the rah-rah team with a bullhorn. I know, that's why I always hate quoting Thomas Friedman. I quote him in the beginning of my book and I do the Uber stories like his taxi stories and I drive myself crazy. But Tom Friedman, one of the things, but I also quote this. He said, that Bush was right about the Iraq war because we needed to tell the Arab world, suck on this.
Jesus.
That's what the top New York Times columnist said, and everybody thought that was normal. Like, that kind of outright hatred and bigotry of Arabs and Muslims in this country has been around for decades. Imagine if someone said, hey, we should tell the Jewish world, suck on this, okay? Well, they'd get banned into oblivion like Kanye West, and very, very rightfully so, because those are monsters. You say it about Arabs, nobody cares. They call you the top New York Times columnist and pay you for decades on end. Anyway, Mace 54321 writes back, and the media in this country is basically telling us to forget everything we've been told and know to be true, and instead believe the obvious BS, the American propaganda machine at its finest. That's 100% right. Dragonfire Mathematician X says, don't forget how the Bush administration completely abandoned our vets that were butchered in that war and left them to die in the alleyways. So many of our older, mentally disturbed homeless are Iraq vets.
Yes.
100% right, support the troops my ass. They hate the troops, they never help the troops. Incoming service member gets like $19,000 a year. What the hell, we're the largest defense we spend nearly $1 trillion on defense. Oh, not for the troops, it's for our beloved donors. Everything you hear in mainstream media is a misrepresentation on purpose to support corporate rule. Sexy Speed Racer says, can you imagine how many solar panels, wind farms, miles of high-speed rail we could have had with that money that did squat to make us safer? It made us, of course, less safe. Our politicians are disgusting. Back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys, but also Louis Darby and a number of, it's a little bit different way of listing it there. Sorry, that's why I got tripped up on the names for a second. But thank you for joining, Louis. We appreciate it. You could do likewise by hitting the join button below the video on YouTube. Casper.
Well, let's talk about FBI spies spying in on activists. In the summer of 2020, a woman who referred to herself as a sex worker, she had pink hair, called herself Chelsea, joined the Chinook Center, which is a group of left-wing activists in Colorado Springs. Now, over that year, the activists learned that her name actually wasn't Chelsea, and she wasn't actually a sex worker. Strange. In fact, Chelsea's real name was April Rogers, and she was an undercover cop enlisted by the FBI to spy on the Chinook Center. Now, here's a picture of Rogers at a housing rights march with other activists. And what I find so hilarious is how the FBI just buys into stereotypes about left-wing activists. So it's like, oh, we need to find a spy, so let's find a woman with pink hair and have her claim that she's a sex worker, because that's what left-wing activists are.
And it was not really emphasized in the article at all, but I had the same exact reaction. It's hilarious what they think the left wing is.
100%.
Like, all left-wing protesters have to have their hair dyed and are probably hookers. That's probably the conversation they had at police headquarters.
And that's probably the language they use in regard to sex workers as well, So
exactly.
Now, Rogers' goal was to gather information for the FBI and essentially try to entrap the activists. Like, let's just be clear, that is what that is, entrap the activists. That means persuade the activists to engage in illegal activity, okay? And should they take that bait, well, they would be arrested. Now, here's how her strategy works, okay? Rogers volunteered with administrative tasks, which gave her access to information of all the organizations that used that particular center as an office. She sent that information to the FBI like any good spy would. Rogers also invited at least 2 young male activists to her apartment and implied to them that there was a possibility of, a sexual encounter among them, okay? Now, here's what one activist found when they showed up to her apartment. One of the activists lured to a meeting with Rogers described walking into the apartment, and there's two guys sitting there with her, he said. Rogers asked if he could find her an illegal gun to buy. The activist recalled, "I'm not going to sell one to you illegally," the activist, a firearms enthusiast, told Rogers and her two companions. He then left. Now, another activist admitted to enjoying the honeypot scheme, but luckily the scheme didn't work. Rogers invited over a second man, Gabriel Palkic. Like the first activist, Palkic entered the apartment to find two men with Rogers. They said their names were Mike and Omar. Mike was missing his left leg from the knee down. Omar was kind of a Middle Eastern looking guy with a big beard, he said. Both had tattoos, both were very buff. Now, according to Palkic, Mike and Omar told him that they could get him illegal weapons, like TNT and grenades if he wanted it. But luckily he didn't fall for it. He continued to hang around with Mike and Omar because they were generous, buying him meals, drinks, and cigars when they met. But Palkic eventually told the two men that he didn't want any weapons and stopped returning their calls and text messages. So again, the effort to try to entrap some of these activists failed, which I'm really happy about. But eventually Rogers got caught as an informant for the FBI. I'll tell you how in just a moment. But Cenk, so far, what are your thoughts?
So, look, this is a ironic result of this investigation, but I began to have a little bit of sympathy for the right wingers. And so, because the FBI and the cops do the same trick every time. They come in and they go, "Hey, you guys want some weapons? Hey, you guys want to kill people?" It's classic entrapment. They do it mostly to the left wing, not to the right wing. Okay, in fact, they let a Nazi go while they were busy doing this, and he wound up murdering a lot of people. We'll get back to that story in a second. But now with some of the right wingers, when they say, "Hey, you guys want some weapons?" The right wingers always say yes, right? Not always. You see some cases where they go, "No, I don't want it," or they probably already have some, etc. And a bunch of cases where they said, "No, I don't want to do the violence," right? But for right wingers who've been trained to believe that your gun is to protect you against the tyranny of government. Someone comes by and goes, "Hey, shouldn't you kill that government official?" That becomes alluring. And so I don't have sympathy for the guys who get allured by that.
Right.
But guys, whether you're right wing or left wing, watch out, okay? The FBI does entrapment all the time. Doesn't mean everything the FBI does is wrong. Stop thinking in binary ways. FBI is purely evil, deep state, or FBI is all angels, right? And by the way, the right wing has believed both of those things at different times, right? So here they are doing a classic sting operation on the left. One of the things that they targeted was a protest against rents that were too high.
It's insane. No, it's insane. It really is. And look, understand that this is happening with the backdrop of endless politically motivated mass shootings that the FBI does not foil. You get what I'm saying? Like you have message boards with these extremists talking about how they're gonna shoot up grocery stores and like writing their manifestos about white replacement theory or whatever. None of that gets foiled, but they've got time to spy in on a housing protest.
Yeah, and to be fair to the FBI, some of them do get foiled. We do talk about it on the show, and some are legitimate investigations, but tons and tons of them go unaddressed. Because there's a mindset in American law enforcement that the left protesting companies or wage issues or capital is so much more dangerous than the right that is actually planning violence, right? And in fact, they said the cops in those reports are like, on the rent protest, they're like, there was a couple of people with red flags. We think that means communism, so we went to go kick their ass and arrest them.
I mean, this country.
What does that have to do with
no,
breaking
but, I mean,
the law?
But let's just keep it 100. Like the critique from the left in regard to the FBI really has a lot to do with that. The FBI's long history of deploying violence and spying in on left-wingers or anyone that they suspected of being communist. Like that's the FBI's history. So I understand where that binary thinking comes from the left because of that history. But nuance is important, and that's what we're trying to do here. So how exactly did Rogers' plot get foiled, right? Like how was she discovered by the activists? That's my favorite part of the story for obvious reasons. So An activist by the name of Jacqueline was accused of assaulting a police officer with her bike at the housing rally with other Chinook Center activists, okay? Now she maintains that she threw her bike down to the ground out of alarm when the officer dressed in riot gear charged at her. The bike never touched the officer. As part of the evidence in her case, Jacqueline was given access to the officer's body cam footage. And that is where things started to unravel for Rogers. So in the footage, the officer mentioned there were 2 undercover cops among the activists. April with her giant boobs, the officer said, referring to one of the cops.
So the person who's undercover for the cops, the one with the pink hair, is the one that cops behind the scenes are going, remember, don't arrest her. She's the one with the giant boobs.
Unbelievable.
So classy.
Now, after watching that video, the activists were eventually able to figure out that Chelsea was not actually Chelsea. Chelsea was in fact April Rogers and was an FBI spy. Now, has April ever confessed to her role in being an FBI spy? When called as a witness in a state court hearing, she testified that the Justice Department instructed her not to answer questions about the FBI investigation. Quote, "I've been told to respond, I respectfully decline to answer," end quote, Rogers said under oath. The Colorado Springs Police Department declined to make her available for an interview. All she told the state court was that she participated in a housing march with activists under the authority of the FBI. Rogers has left the center for obvious reasons, but the scars of her infiltration leaves an impact, right? Because once that happens, it's so, even if the FBI plot to spy in on these left-wing activists didn't work, it still leads to a climate where people don't know whether they can trust each other, right? So it still accomplishes something on behalf of the FBI, which really, really sucks.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, it has a chilling effect on all these protesters.
Right.
And they do very often infiltrate, which leads to last couple of things here. Number one, don't ever fall for any of these traps. If someone is telling you, let's go commit violence, there's 2 excellent reasons why you shouldn't do it. One, they're very likely undercover officers, okay? And you're gonna go to jail for a long time. Number 2, you should never do violence anyway. What are you doing? I mean, look, but again, this is the second story out of many that Trevor Aronson at The Intercept has covered. And in none of the cases that the left wing actually fall for it, none of them did the violence.
Could it be that the left wing isn't actually violent at all? Could it be?
Yeah, I mean, the ironic thing of all of these sting operations is that the overwhelming evidence is that the left wing will not do violence. No matter how much you egg them on, no matter how easy you make it for them and encourage them to do it, they won't do it, right? So now, that's exactly right. We're progressives. We battle people politically and with our ideas because our ideas are better than theirs. If you resort to violence, that is a form of surrender, saying my opinions are not as good as yours. I'm not as, I can't win this argument, so I'm gonna resort to something physical. Don't ever do that, it's immoral. Okay, by the way, we're gonna have the link to Trevor's article in the description box below, which you should always check out. Brilliant reporting on his part. Look at that, independent outlets like The Intercept doing great reporting as opposed to mainstream media. And lastly, Anna, one other thing I figured out from this story. The right wing is so enraged by there being cops within the crowd or whatever they theorize about January 6th, and then all the militia groups or the right wing groups that have been infiltrated right before they did the violence, and so like, can you believe it, right? I realized why, because they've never had to deal with it before. They're not used to it. The left wing is used to it because it's been done to them for time immemorial, right? But for the right wing, it's like a totally new thing. There are cops, they can investigate me too? Oh my God, it's never occurred to them. The cops let them walk into the Capitol and they're like, can you believe these deep state monsters, these Gestapo that didn't open the door for us as we were breaking things down and threatening to kill people?
I mean, some of them did.
Yeah, but right wingers not used to ever having their actions being checked by the authorities because the authorities are almost always right wing. So now right wingers, welcome to our world, where the government is not on your side, they're on the side of the powerful, okay? Not just the government, but the corporate interests. And they work in tandem here. And so that's why they're busting out protests of oil pipelines and rent that's too high.
Yeah, protests about, rent that's too high. It's insane. All right, we should probably take a break. When we come back, if you suspected that Ron Desantis was lying about who the Don't Say Gay bill would be applied to, you'd be correct. I'll give you the details on what he's up to now when we come back.
All right, back on TYT. First of all, don't forget about our podcasting network. You can get most of our shows and some unique shows that are just podcasts. Anywhere you get your podcast, boom, there it is. Look at all those wonderful shows. Make sure you're checking it out. And I run down daily at tyt.com/live. Starts with the damage report at 1 p.m. Eastern, goes all the way through the Young Turks. Make sure you're checking out all of our shows, including our newest shows, Watch List with J.R. Jackson and I'm Boss with Nina Turner. All right, so now let's go to Super Chat. Purple Becca says 2531 writes in, hey, Cenk and Anna and TYT, thank you for shedding light on the military spending and the devastation of wars. I come from a military family. My brother, late father, and friends are unrecognizable after serving. They take away our families.
Jesus.
That is so true in so many ways, and thank you for writing in and sharing that personal story. And that's why I get so frustrated at the rest of the media, where they think, oh yeah, it's normal, it's normal. Yeah, we send your kids off to die while they funnel $5 trillion to their donors. And we just say, no, nothing wrong with that. We gave Iraq democracy, it was wonderful. When Russia does an invasion, terrible. When America does an invasion, oh, wonderful, okay, yeah, 20 years later, we brought them democracy, it was worth it. No, garbage. Chris Birch writes in, thank you for carrying Jon Stewart, because American leaders have it ass backwards. They are the garbage and troops are the real leaders. Exploitation of poor people, innocent poor people, sick. A couple of people mentioning Jon Stewart. Tiny Dancer says, Jon Stewart kept me informed and sane during the Bush administration.
I remember that.
Yeah.
He was good.
No. Jon Stewart was excellent. Yeah. No, the reason I pause is because there's some, I don't even know what it is. I shouldn't even mention it. Some leftists are complaining about Jon Stewart. I don't know why. All I know is when we were on the air fighting like hell against the Iraq war, there was only 2 other people in media that basically were on our side in national media. Amy Goodman from Democracy Now! And Jon Stewart on The Daily Show.
Totally.
Okay, so, and Jon Stewart fought for those first responders better than any politician I have ever seen in my lifetime. He knows how to bring attention to an issue. He knows how to shame people in the correct way, the powerful for all the wrongdoings, put a spotlight on it and get change. So I love what Jon Stewart has done, and you guys are absolutely right. Brimstone Pete said, wars never end well ever, but wars revenue and resources, that's what people fight over, resources and money. It's true, it's obvious, but you never again see it in media. Louis Darby says, to Anna and Cenk, passion for the truth in this day and age is rare and a precious thing. It frightens many because we are not used to it, which is a shame. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Luis, thank you. And Zara Sarongth, thanks for being a member. Big Crunk 75 on Twitch says, I'm still dealing with the effects of my deployment to Iraq. The Bush administration should still be tried for war crimes.
Absolutely.
That's right, but it's never gonna happen because the elites are protected forever. Even Trump's is protected. Now the Manhattan DA backpedaling out of the room, just like we predicted. We got that story for you later. And who's the guy who let off Bush and all the war criminals? Obama. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys.
We have an update on what Ron Desantis is now up to in the state of Florida, especially when it comes to his discriminatory practices against the LGBTQ community. Let's watch.
The Parental Rights in Education Act, which critics call the Don't Say Gay bill, currently applies to grades K through 3rd. Desantis now wants to apply it through high school.
That's right. We all heard repeatedly, over and over and over again, from all these conservatives who said there's nothing wrong with the Don't Say Gay bill. It only impacts students from kindergarten to 3rd grade. But those of us who suspected that it would go further than that were correct. Because now Ron DeSantis is like, oh, let me just go back to my greatest hits. You know, Trump is doing well in the polling. I really need to increase my national standing with the Republican voting base. So let me just go right back to the issue that put me on the national map to begin with. Now, here's some more detail into how he's expanding the so-called Don't Say Gay bill.
In a surprise announcement, his administration proposing that for grades 4 through 12, instruction on sexual orientation or gender identity is prohibited unless such instruction is either expressly required by state academic standards or is part of a reproductive health course, which parents can opt out of. A DeSantis spokesperson telling ABC News there is no reason for instruction on sexual orientation or gender identity to be part of K through 12 public education. Full stop.
Really, there's no reason for students in middle school and high school to learn about gender identity and sexual orientation? I knew what my sexual orientation was when I was in elementary school. I just knew. I had crushes on boys. So if you are someone who is attracted to the same sex and you don't understand what's going on with you, right? Where would you get that education? Especially if you're living in a right-wing or red state and maybe you come from a conservative family that doesn't want to have those conversations with you. I mean, I knew this was gonna happen. I knew it. I mean, I knew it once they started banning incredibly innocuous and like innocent books like Tango Makes Three, a book about penguins adopting an orphaned penguin. I mean, come on.
Yeah. All right, so first of all, whenever you hear right-wingers talking about the children, they almost never mean it. And I'm talking about Republican leaders and politicians, okay? They use them as shields as they go to drive fear and hatred. So they say, oh, this is about the tiny children. And DeSantis said it over and over again. It's a tiny, I mean, he's not past 3rd grade. I mean, you don't want him hearing anything about gender roles and sex and stuff like that. Sex, I mean, we don't talk about, who was talking about sex? Nobody was talking about sex. Whether someone is gay or straight doesn't have anything to do with sex. It has to do with gender roles, right? So,
but also, sorry to interrupt you, Cenk. All right, so they're expanding this to all students all the way up to 12th grade, okay? So we're talking about people all the way up to age 18, okay? Yeah. Are we really pretending like teenagers, I mean, I would rather have teenagers learn about sex, about gender, about all of this stuff in the context of an educational setting as opposed to the internet, which they have access to, where they have access to far more explicit content that they're purporting to be so concerned about.
Yeah, and you should have sex education in high school and probably junior high. 8th grade, I think, is around where it normally starts. That makes sense. Kids have already entered puberty. You have to teach them things so that they don't stumble into stuff, etc. Right? But now, this is none of that. This is about the children. None of it is about sex. It's about hating gay people. So look, I ran into a dad in Florida. He's gay. He's raising 2 kids. They're in the system, right, in Miami. And he told me the teachers made his kids take down pictures with the rainbow flag in the background of their house. It was an innocuous picture, just happened to be in the house, right? And they, you know why? Because the teachers are scared to death that they're going to be sued and they're going to lose whatever little money they have. They're going to lose their house, etc. So any mention of their parents because they're gay is now eliminated. Because you're not allowed to talk about gay people. You're not allowed to talk about trans people, drag people, whatever, all that stuff, right? Guys, what are you, pretending they don't exist? And don't tell me you don't hate them if you say they're so bad, we shouldn't let kids even know that they exist. No, you guys are, the Republican Party is 100% driven by that hatred. That's why Desantis is doing it now, so he can say, oh yeah, I hate people more than Donald Trump does. I hate gay people more than Nikki Haley does.
Right, but
I'm the biggest hater.
But finish the thought, right? Finish the thought, because why is he doing it, right? Why is he putting his hand in the cookie jar again? It's because he sees this as politically advantageous. And that's what makes our politics so sick, that it's not about representing the best interests of people. It's not about making people's lives better. It's all about, I'm Ron DeSantis and I want more kudos on a national level by going back to the greatest right-wing hits. And this is what he does. It's all about his political future. That is why he's doing this. It doesn't matter who he hurts. It doesn't matter how many kids are harmed by it. It doesn't matter the kind of discriminatory practices that come from it. He's gonna do it because it's politically advantageous. And remember what they told us over and over again when the first iteration of the Don't Say Gay bill was released. Let's take a look, let's remember.
Some of the lawmakers behind this bill, their argument is kids have their whole lives to sort out their sexual orientation or gender identity, so they don't need to have those conversations now.
Opponents worry that it could have a chilling effect on discussion of those topics in any grade. Republican Governor Ron DeSantis left no questions as to whether he will be signing the bill into law.
I think it's inappropriate to be injecting those matters like a transgenderism into a kindergarten classroom. We're going to make sure that parents are able to send their kid to kindergarten without having some of this stuff injected into their school curriculum.
The law that was passed is, to me, common sense that in those grades, those lower grades, you shouldn't be teaching sexual orientation and those matters that should not be covered at that age.
Or any age now, apparently. So it was a lie from the very beginning. It was, okay? This was meant to eventually impact all students in public schools in Florida, and now it's happening.
Okay, Republican voters, instead of accusing you, let me ask you, if you don't like this, then don't vote for the people that are pushing it. So if Ron DeSantis thought this was gonna hurt him in a Republican primary, he certainly would not have done it when Nikki Haley said he didn't go far enough and that he should go to higher grades. When Donald Trump attacks him for not being hateful enough, he would think, no, Republican voters are wonderful human beings who are just worried about the children, but they love gay people and trans people and they're open to everybody, equality and justice. Then he would go in the opposite direction. But he thinks Republican voters want the fear and hatred. So Republicans, it's up to you. Do you want it or don't you want it? If you keep telling your politicians you want it, they're gonna give it to you, they're gonna give it to all of us and drive that hatred all the way through.
Yeah, and it's more divide and conquer garbage as well, because while, I don't know, you might get your rocks off by discriminating against people, has it improved your life? Has your life gotten better? Now, just a few more details about what this new effort means, how it's gonna be accomplished. So apparently the proposal doesn't even require legislative approval, although it doesn't matter. Republicans have a supermajority in the state legislature in Florida. It's scheduled for a vote next month before the State Board of Education and has been put forward by the State Education Department, both of which are being led by the governor's appointees, so his handpicked right-wing appointees. And again, the initial law that DeSantis championed last spring bans lessons in kindergarten through 3rd grade. The change was first reported by the Orlando Sentinel. The proposed rule change this year also signals that the governor's willingness to bypass even the compliant state legislature and instead leverage state boards in order to accomplish his high-profile political goals. Late last year, at DeSantis's urging, state medical boards voted to ban children from receiving hormones or undergoing surgeries to treat gender dysphoria.
All right, I love our members. Vicky reminded me of a point I wanted to make. She wrote in, don't say gay bill, done. Now what about food insecurity and homelessness among those same children? Yeah, so these Republican politicians that pretend to care about the children, as AR-15s are ripping through the bodies of our children, they say, no big deal. No, we shouldn't change the law at all. Because the weapons manufacturers need to make more money and funnel more bribes to me. Plus, some of my voters like the hobby. So it kills your kids, I don't care, right? Oh, they're hungry. feeding them. I don't care. They shouldn't have free lunches. They shouldn't have this. They shouldn't have that. You shouldn't have paid family leave so that you could take care of your newborn baby. They don't give a damn about the children. They always use it as an excuse and a prop so they could drive hatred towards whichever community that they are targeting.
Well, speaking of communities that they target, let's go to women and what they're gonna be dealing with in Idaho, increasingly as certain centers and medical services shut down. A hospital in Idaho has announced that it will stop delivering babies, partly due to the current political climate. That's the argument here. Now, in a press release from the hospital, Bonner General health officials cited a shortage of pediatricians and decreasing number of deliveries. The release also pointed to the legal and political climate in a state where trigger laws banned nearly all abortions after the fall of the constitutional right to an abortion. So I'm gonna read an excerpt from their statement on why they're shutting down these services at the hospital. Highly respected, talented physicians are leaving. Recruiting replacements will be extraordinarily difficult. In addition, the Idaho legislature continues to introduce and pass bills that criminalize physicians for medical care nationally recognized as the standard of care. And so these anti-abortion laws really do have an effect on physicians' jobs, and they're terrified of being sued. They're terrified of being targeted for performing care that women need. And so many of them are no longer working in some of these red states. They're deciding to move to other states where they can practice without the fear of getting sued by private citizens. Now, they say they will try to perform deliveries of babies up until May 19th. The hospital has delivered 265 babies in 2022, which is actually a 37.5% decrease from 2008. I wanted to mention that because the lowering, like the decrease in birth rates is also part of this. So I don't wanna leave that part out as well. But that, in addition to the climate for physicians, has led to this issue.
Yeah, so a couple of things stood out to me here. One was a doctor telling us, reporters telling a story of doctors letting women get sicker and sicker with their pregnancies that they knew were not going to reach a healthy conclusion, but they were afraid if they acted earlier to help the mother, that Republicans would say, no, it wasn't clear enough yet, so you're going to jail. It's a felony, okay? And so you could, 5 years at a minimum. I mean, there's a lot of different laws here that apply, but that's one of them, okay? So they're letting the women get so badly in danger so that it's clear enough that they could operate.
Right.
That is a terrible, terrible thing to do, okay? So that's already, on that alone, that's insane, and we should not do that. So number two, doctors are rightfully saying, wait, I can go practice in a state where I'm not going to be in danger of being put in jail or being fined out of existence. I thought, by the way, Republicans wanted tort reform, but apparently not, okay? So, or I'm gonna lose everything I have because I actually did the right thing and I treated a person who needed the treatment. Well, I don't want to risk that. Well, I don't blame them. Who wants to live in a Taliban state? You make the right move and somebody characterizes it as wrong, and now next thing you know, the Taliban throws you in jail. So this is where we are. If you don't think it's Handmaid's Tale, you're kidding yourself. That's exactly what's happening in Idaho.
I mean, look, rural areas already have difficulty in getting the healthcare they need. So these anti-abortion laws happen to make the situation even worse. I can get into those numbers in just a moment. But first, let's actually talk about the anti-abortion laws in the state of Idaho. What do they look like? Well, a trigger law passed in 2020 criminalizes the procedure in almost all cases, with possible defenses if a doctor determines it necessary to save the life of a pregnant woman, or if the pregnant woman has reported rape or incest to law enforcement, which, by the way, that puts the woman in a terrible position because then she has to go through that awful process of our justice system. A medical provider who violates the law can face felony charges punishable by 2 to 5 years in prison, along with suspension or revocation of their medical license. So you can understand why it would be difficult to recruit doctors in states like Idaho. And the Idaho Republican Party, incredibly vicious on this issue. They don't even hide it. They want to go further. The Idaho Republican Party platform declares that abortion is murder from the moment of fertilization and calls for its prevention regardless of the circumstances of conception, including persons conceived in rape and incest. The platform says the party supports criminalizing all abortions within the state. So that's where they're coming from, right? And it's not about saving lives. You look at the states that have these insanely strict bans on women's reproductive rights, and they tend to have incredibly high maternal mortality rates, incredibly high rates of childhood poverty. I mean, if you genuinely care about saving children's lives, wouldn't you focus on ensuring that they're living in safe, healthy environments, that they have all the resources they need to thrive? No, who cares about that? Right? We'd much rather punish women for whatever reason. And then finally, access to obstetric services has been on the decline for years in rural areas, with at least 89 obstetrics units in rural US hospitals closing their doors between 2015 and 2019, according to the American Hospital Association. More than half of rural counties, home to 2.2 million women of childbearing age, are now maternity care deserts. It's insane.
Yeah, look, I'm sure that there are people who consider themselves quote unquote pro-life that really got convinced that life begins at conception when the zygotes are the same exact thing as fully grown independent human beings. I'm sure some of them genuinely believe that, okay? But the Republican leadership and the evangelical leadership are complete liars. And so Anna told me about this. I've got a small part of it in my book. For 5 years after Roe v. Wade, evangelical leaders and Republican politicians were 50-50 on it. They did not have an objection to it. But then Paul Weyrich ran a campaign where 4 Republicans won, running on the issue of abortion. And all of a sudden, the Republican Party and Christian leaders in the country were outraged at the idea of abortion. Remember, I've told you a million times, you can go look it up in numbers. The Bible's actually pro-abortion. That's why evangelical leaders were probably like, I don't know. I mean, the Bible says abortion is good if you think your wife cheated on you. But like, oh, we could win elections with it. Oh, perfect. Yep. And why did it work? For 2 reasons. One is, they're both super depressing. One is, some folks like the idea of the people that were in charge staying in charge. And who were in charge? Men. And they didn't like the equality of women. This is a way of controlling their bodies, from the same people who said, oh, liberals and progressives, they're gonna control our lives. No, they wanna control our lives, and they're doing projection. It doesn't get any more controlling your life than you're not allowed to do what you think is right for your family, with your own body, and the government should seize your body and tell you what to do with it. Okay, that is textbook controlling your life. And then but the main reason was they got to do the propaganda that worked so brilliantly for them all the way up until now. The Democrats are killing children. Aren't you gonna stop the Democrats from murdering poor innocent babies? That's why they're doing it. It's a giant lie. They don't even believe it.
No, they don't. It's a way to accumulate political power. And what's incredible is, even after the 2022 midterm elections, where the reversal of Roe ended up being a political liability for the Republican Party, they're still running with it. They're still going with it. And so I mean, I don't know if it's going to change, if it's going to end up actually working out well for them in the future. But one thing that I do know is that ordinary people don't like government making decisions on their behalf when it comes to the most intimate parts of their lives, period. People actually do want freedom. And when we talk about big government, we want it when it comes to corporations that are so deregulated, so monopolized in some cases, that they screw us over. But that's the only area where the right wing actually wants small government. When it comes to our personal lives, when it comes to the most intimate parts of our lives, they love big government. They can't get enough of it.
By the way, Republicans, a lot of you don't even believe these restrictions, right? You don't want doctors to leave, you're pro-choice, etc. How do I know that? Because look at Kansas. They voted overwhelmingly for pro-choice. Montana voted overwhelmingly pro-choice. Almost every state in the nation is pro-choice. But yet your Republican politicians keep passing these draconian laws. So why don't you rise up and say, no, I like doctors. I don't want to imprison doctors. We won't have any, you morons, right? Doctors save our lives. They save my daughter's life, my uncle's life. What are you doing, you monsters? And yes, I like women. And I believe that they should be able to control their own bodies and should be equal to us. Rise up, otherwise they do represent you and you're okay with it.
We got to take a break. When we come back for the second hour of the show, we'll talk about just how much money Donald Trump raised off of telling his fans and his supporters that he's gonna be arrested at any moment. So we'll get to that. And later in the show, we'll also talk about, honestly, an American hero. A woman who's 100 years old who went to a city council meeting to speak out against book bans. I love her, she's a real queen. You should watch what she says. Come right back.
You're about to watch some behind the scenes footage of the Young Turks. Ooh. Now these are partial videos. If you want to get all of them, you become a member, go to tyt.com/join, and you'll get all the behind the scenes of me, Anna, John, JR, a little bit reality show like, tyt.com/join, and enjoy this.
You know what you're seeing behind me? Jersey, hold. Watch me flip this camera. However I flip it. Do I flip it like this? No, I just took a picture. I'm bitzing right now.
What?
Behind the scenes.
Oh, okay. For members? I don't have my face on.
She doesn't have her face on, folks. Oh, that's JR's ass right there.
You can't take 5 minutes off, can you?
No, I can't, Johnny. Bye. I said it was live stream, but I was lying. It's not a live stream. It's just for members. Bitsy, this is my cat. You know what his name is? Kiki Cat.
Animals are innocent.
Control room and the insanity is obviously there.
Right now, as you can see, I'm directing or tech directing.
I'm so happy to be here.
This is what like a Labor Day beard looks like for Cenk. Man, you're a Young Turks viewer if you recognize me like this.
Oh, thank you. You are the one person in my life I would love to meet.
What's going on, guys? This is a Bitsy or a BTS or behind the scenes with Hassan Piker, AKA Woke Bay.
Oh, hi, I didn't see you there.
I have finished my show, The Damage Report, and now I get into a really awkward time of the day.
When I'm sitting, the control room is right there. So I can see Bart.
This is the Pittsburgh office, by the way. I'll refer to often as the boiler room.
You see how it's ripped? Is it super unprofessional to wear that at a business meeting? Or am I like cool rebel?
I just finished doing the power panel and I'm fired up.
What do you do for TYT?
Not a whole lot.
If you're frantically tweeting at us that something's broken, thank you, because I'm fixing it.
And thank you for being a TYT member.
Super last thing, because there's always got to be a super last thing. Oh, that was disastrous. This has been behind the scenes, behind the scenes.
Welcome to Indisputable. I'm your host, Dr. Rashad Richard. We got a lot happening today. But what do we do on this show? We tell the truth. You know why we tell the truth? Because the truth is simply indisputable.
Rashad, great to be here. Congratulations on the new show. And I gotta let everybody know that Rashad and I go way back.
Here's the pattern that we see in all of these Karen stories. They think they own stuff they do not own. Now, where does that come from? I don't know, maybe slavery. Maybe they think they should still own black people.
This is what happens when Karens weaponize the police.
When you're used to privilege, equality seems like oppression.
It hits you in a certain way when someone is holding you against your will, treating you like you're a criminal and you're an innocent person. This is something that black people face no matter where they are.
A stronger black economy lends itself to a stronger, greater economy. Don't think it's exclusive of you, it's inclusive of you.
What's your beef with critical race theory?
It adds more fuel to the fire of the racist tendencies that we already have.
We have a generation of problem solvers that can remedy the problem if they are properly taught what the problem is.
You know who created redlining in this country? It was a white liberal.
I don't give a damn who created it. If it's a racist policy, Shelley, here's what I don't know. I don't know. See, there you go filibustering, brother. You're scared of this truth, but you're gonna get it, though.
We've been around for about 20 years, and we have about 20 billion views. Am I proud of that? Hell yeah, I am. We put out 20 billion messages in a bottle. Have we helped to move now 2 generations, millennials and Gen Z, to become progressive? Yes, those numbers are real. We moved generations. Were we the only ones? Of course not. But we have been the largest online news show for now decades.
Woo! Get some!
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys, more news.
All right, let's talk about Donald Trump, because he certainly knows how to scam his supporters out of money, and he did just that recently. Donald Trump collected a ton of money by simply declaring that he'd be arrested Tuesday of this week. Now, of course, that was 2 days ago, and he didn't get arrested. And the Manhattan District Attorney has actually released a statement about that potential arrest. We'll get to that in just a moment. But here's how much Trump raised based on multiple reports. Trump raised 1.5 million in the 3 days after he claimed on Truth Social that he'd been arrested, or he'd be arrested on Tuesday. The resulting average of $500,000 a day is almost double the daily average from the weeks before and after he announced his bid for the White House in November. In fact, that part was actually a little surprising, because I assumed after he announced there was like this huge infusion of cash. But no, compared to how much he made over those 3 days after he said he was going to be arrested, not really. So the Trump campaign brought in $11.8 million in the 6 weeks before the announcement, averaging out at $280,000 a day. But get a load of this. And in the 6 weeks after Trump announced his run, his campaign raised $9.5 million, or $226,000 a day, which, by the way, is still a lot of money. But the amount was actually less per day after he announced, which makes me a little happy, right?
Yeah. So yeah, guys, that's the thing that stood out to me too. He's already raising, some numbers have it at 280,000 a day before this stunt, right? And Anna read you the 224 numbers, so let's call it 250. Holy cow, he's raising $250,000 every single day. Man, this scam never ends with Donald Trump, right? And remember, he did the, I love this name for it, official election defense fund. And he raised hundreds of millions of dollars. It was actually not a defense fund and not official.
No.
Every part of it was a lie, went straight to Trump's PAC. And Trump's PAC continues to spend millions of dollars on Trump properties. Okay, so, but don't get mad, Anna, but the right wingers love getting robbed. So they just keep sending Trump money. Oh yeah, oh sure, man, whatever you need, brother. Oh, you're not gonna spend on the things that you said, on veterans, on defense, of the January 6th guys, they all went, all these guys who went to prison, you didn't give them a dime. They rioted for you. You want them to riot again for you, and you never gave them a dime out of the hundreds of millions of dollars we gave you. Well, all right. Hey, that's your money, it's not my money, right? Wingers, you want to keep spending money, that's up to you.
Yeah, the thing is, I don't know if they know they're being robbed, right? Do they know that there was never an election defense fund or whatever the hell?
No, that's a good point. They probably don't know. But but when we tell them, they're gonna say, oh, I don't believe you.
No, I know, they don't trust us, and that's your bad. But anyway, let's get to some more details though, because Alvin Bragg was recently sent a letter from various heads of House GOP committees because they want him to testify, to answer some questions about the possibility of Trump getting indicted and arrested. And Alvin Bragg is like, yeah, I'm a local prosecutor, so you can kick rocks. So he wrote back to them. However, there is some portion of that letter that you should know about. So the Republicans' letter was an unprecedented inquiry into a pending local prosecution and only came after, this is what he wrote, Donald Trump created a false expectation that he would be arrested the next day, and his lawyers reportedly urged you to intervene. Neither fact is a legitimate basis for congressional inquiry, he wrote.
So him saying, hey, you can't mess with my jurisdiction is good and correct, okay? But Here we go. A false expectation that he would be arrested. Now he added that day, right? So.
But he didn't say he was gonna get arrested that day. He said he was gonna get arrested on Tuesday.
Yeah. But my point is, there's an excellent chance, as we've been telling you all along, that Alvin Bragg is never gonna prosecute. That this is all a lot of empty theater as always. Democrats equal empty theater, right? They just will never deliver on anything. So now maybe he was, it's impossible to know behind the scenes. We don't have those facts, right? I'm being transparent with you guys about that. But we're looking at it from the outside. These are several different possibilities. He never meant to prosecute him. He's way too scared to do it. Oh my God, what if I lost? That would hurt my career. And what are the political implications for Democrats? So if you think that a guy who's elected into that office isn't concerned about that, you're nuts. He's definitely concerned about it. Number two, these guys are generally cowards and they're mostly afraid for their own careers. Oh, what if something happens to me, right? That's why he's like all animated now that the Republicans threatened him. Those threats work really well. And now all of a sudden he's backpedaling, right?
I know, but is he backpedaling? Because why did Trump think that he was gonna get arrested Tuesday of that week? And all the reporting indicates that there was no real indication. So it's unclear what basis Trump had for the claim. His lead defense attorney told Insider on Saturday that the defense team hadn't heard an arrest date from the Manhattan DA, but Tuesday came and went with no arrest.
Yeah.
So like I don't mean to give Trump too much credit, okay? So let me just be clear on that. But like, did Trump just decide, oh, let me rile up my supporters so I can fundraise off of them and claim that I'm gonna get arrested this week, even though I have no evidence indicating that I will be?
Yeah, look, it's possible, but my theory is no, Donald Trump is actually very afraid of being arrested. And that's why he goes bananas like this. Like, they're gonna arrest me, everybody riot, right? Now, he didn't say everybody riot, but today he did indicate, that maybe the protest shouldn't be peaceful.
Jeez, he's such a bad guy.
And so what he's trying to do, but he's not wrong about the political calculation here, is show everybody that if you mess with me, you're gonna have significant problems, okay? And you might even have violence directed towards you. So you better watch yourself. That's exactly what the Gestapo did, and it worked, unfortunately, brilliantly. Everybody got scared out of their minds that the Gestapo was gonna come for them.
Right.
The brown shirts and their vigilante violence was gonna come for them. So the Republicans in Congress go, you better not. Well, yeah, we're gonna arrest you. And Trump comes in and goes, oh, well, I don't know if the protests are gonna be peaceful. I don't know, right? Let's see what happens to your personal safety, right? And all of a sudden, Alvin Bragg's like, backpedal, backpedal, backpedal. Look, I don't know. I don't know if he's a liar and never intended to prosecute Trump. I probably have that as most likely.
Yep.
Okay.
Me too.
Or he thought about it and he dipped his toe in and he told the Trump team that it might happen to see what the news reaction would be. And the news reaction has been, oh no, this is terrible. You should never arrest a former president. Everybody on TV says it without blinking an eye. Like, it's a higher bar to arrest a former president. What they're telling you is, no. If you're powerful, you can break the law. You can't break the law at home, right? But a former president can break many, many laws, and you better be careful with what you charge him. So Bragg, if he was doing basically a trial balloon here, got the message loud and clear, oh, back away, right? Meanwhile, Democrats are like, oh my God, we're gonna get Donald Trump.
Yeah, guys, you gotta stop. I mean, our audience probably doesn't fall under this category because we're pretty realistic, but the liberal media landscape getting excited every single time and just falling for it naively every single time drives me crazy at this point.
It's just marketing for Democrats.
It is, and it's bad marketing because it doesn't ever happen. So it looks bad.
And it doesn't help the Democratic Party because you schmucks, people care about their lives.
Right.
You're supposed to get them health care and paid family leave and higher wages. They don't give a damn that you're like, we're gonna get Trump. The only people who care, to be fair, are establishment Democrats.
Right.
Whose lives are perfectly great and they don't want to upset the status quo. They just want to get the meanie Donald Trump.
So, okay, you're fired up, but let's get to the actual fundraising emails because it's just such classic Donald Trump lingo. The daily messages tell recipients that the justice system has utterly collapsed and that they can be a founding defender by giving money to the former president. One such email asked supporters to sign a petition opposing a Trump arrest and afterwards requested donations to his campaign. And he's even fundraising on Truth Social. So pay close attention to his wording here because again, classic Trump. If you're doing poorly, as so many of you are, do not send anything. If you're doing well, which was made possible through the great policies of the Trump administration, send your contribution. Trump wrote Monday. He reposted the same message Wednesday, making no mention of his own false arrest prediction.
That's my last point here. The Republican voters, do you ever get tired of being lied to? Because I know on our side, we're exhausted from the Democratic Party's lies. The nonstop, oh yeah, we care about healthcare. Oh no, Medicare for all. No, never, okay? Oh, we're gonna do higher minimum wage. And then Biden torpedoes it, right? I'm exhausted by the goddamn politician lies. But Republicans, don't you get tired of this stuff? So he told you he was gonna get arrested. He made it up. You sent in the money. And he's gonna direct it toward his properties. Don't you get tired of it? Right, so Alex Jones, so many people in right-wing media, oh, Obama's setting up FEMA camps and he's gonna herd everybody into FEMA camps. Ted Cruz, they're gonna set up hobbit cities, okay? Like
that
all sorts of preposterous lies that never come to fruition, ever, right? And every single time the right-wing voters are like, oh yeah, this stuff. You know, Louis Gohmert once said that Obama was reconstituting the Ottoman Empire. When they passed Obamacare, Louis Gohmert said it would kill 20% of the women in the country.
Why the Ottoman Empire?
Because the Ottoman Empire is Muslim. So he's trying to say, oh, Barack Hussein Obama, you know how Muslim he is. And you know how Muslims are terrible and evil and you should hate them.
Yeah, but like the Ottoman Empire was defeated like literally a century ago.
Yeah,
I know. I'm being ridiculous.
What are you going to get into the mind of Louis Gohmert, one of the dumbest people in America? But Republican voters, you don't get tired of any of these lies. You're totally comfortable with them. All right, well, that's your business. Okay, keep sending him money. I don't care. You're wasting your own money.
Absolute insanity. All right, we gotta take a break. When we come back, the queen that I've been telling you about, a 100-year-old woman in Florida who has some thoughts about the book bans. Come right back.
All right, let's go to YouTube Super Chat for comments. Nicole Monroe says, I was made an Army widow at age 26. My husband committed suicide once he was back from 2 Iraq war tours. The Army hospital turned him away when he went for help that morning. Our government sucks at this. Do you ever see cable news anchors, right, as politicians threaten war, going, wait a minute, are you gonna ask those poor American families to pay the price for these wars? Are you willing to talk about these people suffer all this pain? No, they never ask. How are you gonna pay for it? They never ask. Wars are awesome if you ask American media. Nicole, we try to represent you as best as we can. Thank you for writing in. History Speaks says, Anna, in case you ever forget, here are 2 reasons you stand out as a journalist. 1, your willingness to rethink your views and admit error. 2, you're avoiding the easy approach of conforming your views to your team. Keep on Anning.
Thanks.
So I'm gonna go to YouTube members. Brimstone Pete writes in, but they have the money to take their own daughters where it is legal. 100%.
Yeah,
I don't believe a single rich Republican actually didn't have an abortion because of moral concerns. If they wanted to have an abortion, they definitely had it. I don't believe them. I don't think they have real principles at all, the rich Republicans. Mad Energy says, hey, it happened. He's not being hard on right-wing voters. Referring to me, and others have credited Anna, but it's partly you guys, okay? The one comment from the viewers that affected me was saying, hey, I got my Republican family to check you out, but Cenk was too harsh to Republican voters. I hear you guys. We always take that in. We take reasonable and rational points into account all the time, okay? All right, let me go to Twitch for a second. C. Zerkley wrote in, I love TYT, but I'm kind of tired of getting the vibe from Anna, and even Cenk at times, that my plight as a trans man who could get preggers if raped offends her because she feels like birthing persons is offensive.
So let me just address something, okay? For me, as a woman who has experienced endless debates, like our bodies are so politicized. And I hate feeling from the right wing my entire life that our bodies are just meant for producing children. So the phrase person with a uterus for me is triggering. But I understand the importance of inclusive language. I just don't like to be boiled down to a body part. So Mike Figueiredo from the Humanist Report reminded me of a video we did a few years ago where we were defending someone who used the phrase people with the capacity for pregnancy in the context of the abortion debate, I believe it was. I'm totally fine with that. I think that's totally fine. If that's what they want to use in a medical setting, great. But for me, my personal preference is I don't like to be referred to, even in the context of an abortion debate, as a person with a uterus. Person with the capacity for pregnancy, that's great. That's all I'm saying. I think my track record on transgender issues is pretty clear, and I hope you understand that I have no disdain or hatred for the transgender community whatsoever. That's all.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Also, Dolly, they just became a member. We appreciate it. And Chris Birch just gifted 5 Young Turks memberships, as he's prone to do. Chris, you're awesome. Thank you. So anyone who wants to join, we do this show together. TYT.com/join. All right, Casper.
Well, why don't we hear from an incredible woman?
Banned books and burning books are the same. Both are done for the same reason: fear of knowledge. Fear is not freedom. Fear is not liberty. Fear is control.
The woman you just heard from is 100 years old, and she lives in Florida. Her name is Grace Lynn. And she decided to attend a city council meeting to specifically call out the book bans that are taking place in the state of Florida. Before we get to any more of her incredibly powerful speech, here's a little more on the book bans in Florida. During the 2021 to 2022 school year, Florida had the second highest number of book bans in the country, according to PEN America, a global organization that protects the rights of literature and free expression. They had 566 bans across 21 districts, ranging from the Panhandle to South Florida. Now, these schools are doing book bans either by restricting or diminishing access for either limited or indefinite periods of time. We've been covering the book ban story in Florida as it develops. And one of the stories that always stands out in my mind is that they banned Tango Makes Three it's a children's book about penguins that adopt an orphaned penguin baby. And that was apparently so sexually charged, even though it has no sexual innuendo in it at all, that they decided to ban that book. The school board voted in favor of banning that book. I mean, it's absolutely absurd. Other books include Harry Potter, A Wrinkle in Time, A Wrinkle in Time. Yeah. A Wrinkle in Time. I read A Wrinkle in Time when I was in school. What?
Time travel can endanger kids.
What is going on? The Kite Runner, which was an incredible book and also an incredible movie. They turned it into a film later. Anyway, but yeah, so We have more on her speech, but I want to hear your thoughts first, Cenk.
Yeah, so FDR said the only thing to fear is fear itself. And he's revered for that great comment and courage when we were attacked in Pearl Harbor and he rallied the country. Nowadays, Republicans say you have everything to fear. No, don't be courageous, don't be brave, don't be open to others, don't unite. No, you should fear immigrants. They're criminals and rapists, as Trump called them, right? You should fear Latinos that are coming in caravans. You should fear Muslims. You should fear gay people and LGBTQ people. And now critical race theory. Oh, black people talking about how there's racism in the world. You should fear them, fear, right? And she's absolutely right. They're using it for political gain. It's so obvious. Please wake up, okay? So now, is it real? Is it really happening? Yeah, absolutely, because sometimes you get gaslit by Republicans. No, there's no big book ban. I mean, we want to ban all the books, but they're not really banned. No, they are banned. Look, one of our members just wrote in, Tiny Dancer Dragon. My cousin is a high school literacy teacher in Florida. Her bookshelves are empty.
It's insane.
Okay.
It's insane.
And Jamie Raskin just gave a speech on the floor of the House. In one area, they banned the book 1984.
What?
And they banned Handmaid's Tale. I mean, it's literally Orwellian to ban Orwell.
Wow.
Okay, and this from the party that says they're against cancel culture, and then they're like, ban the books, and ban even discussing the fact that gay people exist, that trans people exist, drag queens exist. Ban it. But we're against cancel culture.
But you
No,
know,
you're not.
but yeah, at least they're warriors for free speech, of course. Right?
Warriors for freedom
and small government.
Yeah, freedom of speech for Shapiro and Charlie Kirk and Ann Coulter to give $40,000 speeches at college campuses. Books, no, ban them or burn them. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's insane. But let's take solace in knowing that women like Grace Lynn exists. Let's hear more from what she had to say.
I am 100 years young. I'm here to protest our school's district book banning policy. My husband, Robert Nickel, was killed in action in World War II. At a very young age, he was only 26, defending our democracy, Constitution, and freedoms. One of the freedoms that the Nazis crushed was the freedom to read the books they banned. They stopped the free press, banned and burned books. The freedom to read, which is protected by the First Amendment, is our essential right and duty of our democracy.
Well said, absolutely well said. I love her.
Yeah, Alexis Merrill, Dragon Queen, just became a member and wrote in, make way for 100-year-old Queen Grace. And I wanted to read that because she really is a queen. I mean, that was just that's the picture of an American.
Yes.
Someone who loves this country and understands what it stands for, including the First Amendment, freedom of speech, and all of us living together, working together, and believing in each other rather than being driven apart by fear and hatred. I can't love her enough. And so, yes, I agree, Alexis. She's my queen too.
Switching gears a little bit, let's talk about right-wing media privilege when it comes to essentially getting what they want in cable packages and media deals. Let's do it.
Pleased to share that Newsmax and DirecTV have reached a business agreement and that our channel will return to all DirecTV Stream and Uverse customers on Thursday, March 23rd. DirecTV has consistently expressed their interest in providing Newsmax to its subscribers and made it clear that they wished we had never left, which is why we are glad to have reached an agreement.
That's right, DirecTV and Newsmax have decided to kiss and make up and work on their unstable relationship. Now, about 2 months ago, at 11:59 p.m. on January 24th to be exact, after the satellite provider decided to dump the network, a bunch of right-wingers decided that they were gonna make a big deal about it. They're gonna boycott DirecTV. Now, why did they break up? DirecTV previously said it would have liked to continue offering the channel, but that Newsmax demanded a fee to supplement advertising revenue, which it argued would have led to increased costs for its viewers. Okay, but that breakup sent shockwaves apparently through Newsmax and their buddies in the Republican Party. They argued the channel had been deplatformed for being a conservative outlet. And we have more details on that. Let's watch.
Companies choose to silence conservative speech.
We're the ones who are censored by big tech.
By first deplatforming or eliminating One American News, and now they're going after Newsmax.
I think America should be able to have a choice in the news they are able to get, a choice in being able to see it. I would hate to see that someone's being kicked off simply because they provide something conservative.
Freedom of speech. This is constitutional rights. This is bigger than even DirecTV.
Americans are tired of cancel culture. Conservatives are not being treated fairly.
Okay, Representative Eric Burleson from Missouri compared the loss of the channel, I can't even believe this, Jesus, to the Holocaust on the House floor. While Colorado Republican Lauren Boebert said conservatives were not being treated fairly. I mean, you know what? I want my own show. TYT, the network, should be carried on cable. DirecTV should carry us, and we demand a fee in addition to advertising revenue. In fact, we want them to find advertisers on our behalf.
Yeah, but honestly, that's actually true. So let me explain a couple of things here, guys. So right now on DirecTV, there are 3 right-wing channels. Okay, Fox News, Newsmax, and the First TV. There might be even more, I don't know. They just pile on right-wing channels.
What's the First TV? There's another one?
Yeah, there's another garbage one, right? And so it doesn't matter, they're all trash, right? But okay, you wanna have conservative opinions, I have no problem. And I don't mind Newsmax because at least they admit they're conservatives. I mean, Fox News pretend to be straight news for all these years, and the rest of mainstream media was like, oh yeah, I might get paid by them one day. Oh, I love it, yeah, sure, they're real news. They're not real news. Okay, that's okay though. You just say, okay, I'm conservative Newsmax, no problem, right? So they got 3 of them on there. How many progressive channels do they have on? 0, okay? Now, I will tell you this. So are there any of the points true? It's not cancel culture. They drop channels all the time. They drop like golf channels, cooking channels, etc. It's just economics and it's capitalism. DirecTV says, I don't make money from this, I don't want it, right? I make money from that, I want that, right? That's just pure capitalism. And then the government comes in, and the former Republican politician says, if you are not politically correct, we will punish you. We don't care about your business interests, we don't care about capitalism or free markets. No, the government will oppress you unless you do as you are told. So on the philosophy and ideology, they are 100% wrong. But I do respect them because they fight for each other, right? Newsmax goes down, every Republican legislator jumps in there.
That's a good point. That
and
is
they
a
go,
good point.
we want Newsmax. But why? Because they want marketing. They want marketing, and Newsmax does marketing for them. And they're smart, they band together, and they got it. Mission accomplished, right? You know how many progressive legislators, progressive leaders fight for other progressives?
Come on.
None.
Come on.
Zero.
Come on.
Zero.
Yeah, they line up.
They would never do that. They would never do it.
I mean, they can't wait to line up to attack each other. I mean, it's, come on.
All progressives ever do is that we're the only ones who like bring on progressive candidates. We see, Jesus Christ, we started Just Democrats right here on this show. We help progressive organizations over and over and over again. Do I see other progressives jumping in and go, oh my God, let's support fellow progressives? Almost never. So when you see right wingers doing this, don't cry. Okay, at least they know they're smart enough to band together. Progressives never do it. Our legislators are the biggest disappointments you could find. I've never seen them fight for other progressives, right? And certainly can't do it effectively. So that's why you have an uneven playing field. That's why the media is filled with right-wing propaganda, and only not just networks but shows that progressives do. We're at least a network. We're trying to somehow miraculously do it on our own, right? But all the other progressive shows are generally done from their basement because no one ever comes to the rescue and goes, hey, you know what? We should have a progressive voice on DirecTV. We should have a progressive voice on cable. Nope, nothing. Nothing, zilch. And they're never gonna change. So unfortunately, our side is filled with giant egos who think, oh my God, helping others would be helping someone you don't know. That would, how does that help my career?
I mean, yeah, no, it's true. And look, in terms of like the right-wing media ecosystem, they amplify each other, they support each other, they protect each other. And the reason why that exists is because they're well funded. There's like endless resources from their billionaire funders, so they don't have to fight each other. In the left-wing media space, you actually have to earn money, right? And so that creates like a, I guess, competitive environment, if that's what you want to call it, and that leads to sniping. And so if
nonstop.
So if you actually care about like you need solidarity, you need people power to actually fight back against a corrupt system and all of the resources that corrupt system has to fight us. But it's real hard to do that when we all exist in this climate, this environment where we're all trying to survive. And part of that is making enough money to put food on the table, and people think they need to snipe each other.
I mean,
it doesn't have to be that way, but it ends up being that way.
Yeah, there's a great irony buried in there, which is that the progressives are capitalists. They have to earn money to be able to stay in business. Otherwise, they can't even do their shows, right? So, and then people get mad at them and go, how dare you earn money? Well, they literally can't do the show if they don't earn money, because there is no George Soros coming to rescue. George Soros loves corporate Democrats.
Yeah, he does.
He fights against progressives. Almost all the Democratic donors fight against progressives. They don't help progressives. So progressives have to be super capitalists in the most ironic way, whereas all the right-wing media are socialists. They just get money handed to them.
That's true.
$10 to $20 million at a time. Here's a gift.
And not
here's
investments, guys. Not investments. Like literally just grants. Like here's the money, take it.
So you're right. One of the reasons that they are better at working together is because they're all drowning in floating in money. They're like, oh, you got 20 million? I got 20 million. Popping champagne.
Which left-wing media network or show can offer $50 million to a talentless hack like Steven Crowder?
And look, the Prager example is the best one. Getting over $20 million every single year as a grant by right-wing billionaires. Just here, take the money, right? So, yeah, Newsmax doesn't need to be the third conservative channel on DirecTV. I've lost count, maybe they're fourth or fifth. But on the other hand, and by the way, they didn't get money. It looks like DirecTV is basically saying, yeah, we got pressured by these thugs in the government, so we had to put this junk channel back on.
But they didn't get the deal they wanted.
But they didn't get the deal they wanted.
Okay, that makes me feel better though. That makes me feel way better, because I thought Newsmax got everything it wanted.
No, it didn't.
Okay.
No, you could tell, and by the way, it's not absolutely clear, but I know, I'm in the industry, and they could tell from the language that they used that they didn't get a carrier fee, okay? So it's not, at least they weren't given free money, which by the way, AT&T, DirecTV, and a lot of cable companies have done in the past. Like, oh, you're a cable company that's right-winger that gets no audience at all. Here's a carriage fee. Make tens of millions of dollars for free. In fact, AT&T egged on One America News to begin in the first place. It was their executives that said, hey, we could use a channel like this, and you give them a carriage fee, and then they get free money for no reason.
Yeah.
That's done for zero progressive networks.
I gotta read this. I wasn't going to, but what you just mentioned, I want to reinforce it with this, because DirecTV clearly supports diverse voices, including conservative ones. As a standalone company, DirecTV helped give Newsmax its start nearly a decade ago, as it continues to do with upcoming news networks, which is why we are pleased to reach a mutually beneficial agreement. While we raise the issue of censorship relating to our removal, we now believe in DirecTV's commitment to distributing diverse viewpoints, including conservative ones.
Which diverse viewpoints? MSNBC hates progressives more than Fox News does. Show me one on cable anywhere, a progressive network that supports progressives like Bernie Sanders, AOC, whoever else, right?
It just doesn't exist.
Doesn't exist. This is, and by the way, have the progressive legislators made a big stink out of this DirecTV issue? Have they come in there, fought and said, hell no, and this is not capitalism, and et cetera, and why don't they have a progressive? Forget us, okay? We don't need them, by the way. We don't need them. We're already on almost every platform, okay? We did it ourselves, and you all can kiss our ass, okay? So now, but if would take another network, take another show, right?
Right.
Would they go fight for them?
Majority Report.
Yeah, would they go, oh my God, we need Majority Report on DirecTV? Progressive legislators would never do that, never. Okay, neither would any progressive organization. They'd be like, oh, what do I get out of it? Anyway, you can see where I'm going.
All right, sore spot for Cenk, but I totally agree with you on it. We got to take a break.
Sore, look,
no,
I
get it.
It's a sore spot for the country.
It is.
It's an uneven playing field. This is their media. This is our media, and all the schmucks in DC are like, oh, what? I don't see the problem. How's my career going? How's my career going?
Yeah, 1000%. I agree with you on that. Anyway, we got to take a break. When we come back, a country singer decided to stick up for the rights of drag queens and transgender individuals, and Candace Owens is big mad about it. We've got that and more coming right up.
All right, back on TYT. Here, I'll do a shout out for other progressives. Amanda Hobson writes in, just a reminder, there's a Supreme Court election in Wisconsin on April 4th. Conservative candidate is extreme anti-choice and was a major player in the fake electors for 2020. Please vote and help. So if you're in Wisconsin, make sure you remember that April 4th election. Belly Diva 23 says, I turned 23 for the second time this year. 46, oh, that's funny. $46 for my 46 years of life. Thank you, Cenk and Anna, for always keeping it real. Love you guys. Right back at you. Let's go to YouTube members. Barris says about Republicans, and he's a new, Barush, it's probably a Turkish name. New member saying there's freedom of speech, but if you talk too much, you're gonna regret that. That is the Republican policy, yes. Jabberwocky makes a great point. Knowledge is power, they have to take that away. That is definitely part of the thing too. I've said this a million times, Republicans are against anything that brings you information. So if it's media or professors, now doctors, scientists, they are all against those things now, the Republican politicians, because they don't want you to get the real information. If you do, that's dangerous for their interests. Will Silver says TYT has a larger audience than Newsmax, doesn't it? Get a deal, Cenk. So look, we tried in the past, but I gave up on the cable guys. But we have deals everywhere else. And so if you're on any platform, just type in TYT and you're almost definitely gonna get it. And so do we have a bigger audience than Newsmax? In terms of online videos, it's a joke. It's not even close. They're not within planets of us, right? Or OAN or First Dingle Dongle or what all these different shows and networks. By the way, do you get that sense from mainstream media? They talk about Newsmax, what? 1 billion times over. How often do they talk about TYT? Never, right? So anyway, my disgust for mainstream media and for politicians can't get any higher. I like Snack Panther lightening it up though. Writing in, from all these political stunts, the new nickname is Ron Desantis. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. You know what, Snack Panther? Funny enough, you get a snack. $100 reward from Blue Apron. Okay.
But Snack Panther sounds like my kind of person to hang out with, like yeah, honestly.
That's funny, I love funny. Okay, so email rewards@tyt.com. They'll verify that you're a member. You can get a $100 gift card from Blue Apron. Okay, let's go to who's Nithinks Sorry, you guys' handles are so hard. Anyway, on Twitch says, my very close friend Jake lost his life in Iraq. I try very hard not to hate people, but I sure hate the Bush administration.
You should.
For killing my friend.
Yeah, you should. I hate them too.
And your voice is almost never heard. Do you ever see anybody on cable news going, Bush administration killed my friend, and it's an outrage what they did? No, they have all those same guys on MSNBC now. All right, back on TOT, Jen Canada with you guys. More news.
Let's get right to our next story.
I'm a proud Karen, a proud defender of children. So when you take that next step, I don't know, maybe you're gonna help your child transition so that you can hold them up on stage and say, looky, my child is trans. Please know that it will be Candace Owens, proud Karen #1, that will call the police on you and your husband. It'll be me. Probably Matt Walsh will try to beat me, but I will personally make sure that I am the one that makes the first phone call.
Wow, you must be so proud. That was self-proclaimed Karen, Candace Owens, who decided to go after a country music singer by the name of Maren Morris after she shared with a concert crowd that she introduced her young son to drag queens, which I've said this before, let me reiterate again. Drag queens are not inherently sexual. Drag queens oftentimes perform in non-sexual ways, but the right wing, of course, tries to make it seem as though they are just inherently sexual. That's the whole point of drag queens when it's not true. Now, with that said, Morris, the country music artist, recently appeared at the Love Rising LGBTQ+ benefit concert in Nashville, alongside other artists and representatives from the drag show community. The concert was a form of protest against the Tennessee law restricting drag show performances. So I'm gonna read what Morris said while speaking at this event. I brought my son here earlier today for sound check, and he's turning 3 this week, and we got to go in the room where all the queens were getting ready and doing their makeup. And he freaked out when he went in there because it's just magic what drag queens do. Yes, I introduced my son to some drag queens today, so Tennessee effing arrest me. So after the clip of Morris began to circulate online, Candace Owens just had to comment on it, but also take it a step further. First, she referenced Morris's comments from the concert and also played a clip from her recent appearance on RuPaul's Drag Race, where she apologized to the contestants on behalf of the country music community. This is the comment. So this is on January 15th, 2023. Coming from country music and its relationship with LGBTQ+ members, I just want to say I'm sorry. And Owens did not like that. So we'll get to the next clip in just a second, but before we do, Cenk.
Yeah, so the Republicans seem to treat drag queens as inherently sexual because like, oh my God, you can't have any kids exposed to them. But they're not inherently sexual. What you're doing is you're outing yourself and you're saying, I'm aroused by drag queens. So I assume everyone else is aroused by drag queens. And that is why, by definition, the kids should not be allowed near them.
That's a really good point, and I never thought about it that way, right? Because I'm like, why do they think that? Like, like, I mean, in pop culture, drag queens have been in pop culture for quite some time now. So like, I feel like anyone who has a pulse knows that they're not inherently sexual, but anyway,
you know why I know they're not inherently sexual? Rudy Giuliani dressed up in drag on Saturday Night Live. So if it's true that you're worried, Candace Owens, about exposing kids to drag shows and ones that are clearly sexualized. Well, not only did Rudy Giuliani get dressed in drag, in that same skit, we had Donald Trump. But was it sexualized? Yes. Now, we can't show the clip because of copyright issues, but we can show you pictures from it.
Yeah, we do have pictures.
Yeah, Donald Trump sniffed Rudy's neck, right? And then buried his face in Rudy's bosom.
Yeah, that's pretty sexual.
No, the whole skit was completely sexual. So there they are, Rudy's in drag and Donald Trump is doing sexual things to Rudy Giuliani dressed in drag. So Candace, if you're being principled, and by the way, that was on national TV. All the kids in the country could watch it, okay? If you're being principled, you should call for the arrest of Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani. Now that's a stone cold fact. Will you? No, of course not, because this isn't about sexuality. This is hate and fear of the LGBTQ community.
1000%.
And that's what Candace profits off of that. That her little grift is driving fear and hatred against the others, and she monetizes it. She doesn't mean a word of it.
In fact, I want to give you some of the dialogue in that skit featuring Rudy Giuliani and Donald Trump. Apparently during that, Rudy said, "Oh, you dirty boy. Donald, I thought you were a gentleman." And Trump says, "Well, you can't say I didn't try."
Rudy and Trump are basically humping each other while one of them is in drag, and every kid in the country could see it. By the way, it's still online, so every kid in the country can still see it today. Oh my God, we gotta arrest Trump and Giuliani on that alone. It's not my idea. I think it's the dumbest idea in the world. It's Candace Owens' idea. So Candace, do you want them arrested? If you say no, you're the most obvious lying hypocrite in America. If you say yes, that'll be an interesting day.
We already knew she was a lying hypocrite. But anyway, with that said, let's hear some more tough girl talk in the next clip from Candace Owens.
You do need to go, Marin. It is just, the pandering here is just absolutely ridiculous. Why don't you go work on some songs, turn out some hits, and get people to want to follow you and admire you based on you living a wholesome life and based on you having actual talent, not based on you pandering to the LGBTQ+ community while disrespecting the fans that even put you in the position that you are in today, country music fans. How disgusting. People that downloaded her music, she's just saying in front of drag queens. I just, where I'm from, where like people are downloading my music, it's just like, especially where I'm from, it's just so bad. It's just like they're horrible people. Please accept me, accept me. So absolutely disgusting. And I do hope that she keeps leaning into this because eventually she will trip herself up. Eventually she will admit to doing a crime, which is we've seen happen over and over again. People are so radical in theology that eventually they admit they've done something wrong. And let me tell you something right now, Marin Morris, when you do, I will be the first one to call the police and contact the governor's office. I am a proud Karen, a proud defender of children.
Candace, proudly a cop. What I thought was hilarious in that rant was how she's talking about pandering. What does she think she's doing? She's pandering to a right-wing audience, okay? The other thing is, like this, the advice and the pressure to live a wholesome life. Like, do you think you live a wholesome life? Your entire career is based on spreading fear and hatred of groups of people who historically have been discriminated against, currently have no power. Is that the wholesome life that you're bragging about?
Yeah, it's just, well, wholesome, are you kidding me? She was the biggest supporter of Kanye West in media after he said that he liked Hitler.
100%, that's right.
So that's wholesome? Liking Hitler? Why? Because she was gonna make money off of Kanye West. Because her husband owned a website they were gonna sell to him. And they thought, this is the dumbest guy in America, easy to sucker him. And after a while, by the way, that they couldn't sell it to Kanye, they declared bankruptcy because it was worth nothing. Okay, look, she used to be a left winger. She sued people based on racial discrimination against her, right? But she realized there's no money for progressives in media.
There isn't.
So she was like, oh, I got a way better grift. Now I'll hate Jews and LGBTQ folks and all those people. And people, and I'll say terrible things about black people. Oh my God, white people love that. And right wingers, not all white people. And so she realized that's where the money is. Same thing Dave Rubin realized, same thing a lot of people realized. The money's in the right wing, you go there, you say things that are hateful, and you'll become rich.
By the way, what happened to parents should have a say in how their children are raised or what their children learn about, right? So apparently conservative parents are the only ones who should have a say in the context of school districts where they get to make all the decisions about what the curriculum includes, what kind of books all kids can read and can't read. Who cares about parents who might have different ideas and might want their kids to learn about the country's history with racism, or maybe they want their kids to read some of the banned books that have now been banned by conservative parents and all of that. But this country music singer doesn't get to make a decision about whether or not the young child gets to meet drag queens. Apparently, you should call the cops on that.
No, Democrats suck, man. So the minute they started attacking parents in places like Texas and calling child protective services, if parents just took their kids to therapy, for example, if they're trans, right, and they're thinking of transitioning and they want to make sure that they are mentally healthy, right? They're like, oh, take away their kids. Well, that's a war on parents. Is there a single conscious Democratic politician in the country? Why don't you attack them for a war on parents? No, can't figure it out.
Yeah, it is maddening because you have one side, the right wing, that plays by their own rules, right? And they're vicious and they're aggressive. And then you look at left-wing politicians, pudding soft.
Unless, of course, they're running in a primary against a progressive.
Then all of a sudden they're pretty vicious themselves. Yeah, you're right
which by the way gives away the game. Then no, they're not soft by nature.
Yeah.
No, they purposely lay down in front of Republicans.
Time to be naughty by nature, okay?
Yeah. But they are when it comes to progressives and primaries. All of a sudden they're vicious. Oh, so you can fight. You're just choosing not to fight Republicans.
Yeah, that's exactly right. All right, Cenk, we've got a few more minutes left. Let me preview the bonus episode for our members. We're gonna keep it light.
One exception. Because look, C. Zerkley, well, maybe I could do it now. Go ahead, tell us about the bonus episode.
Okay, so in the bonus episode, we're gonna keep it light, we're gonna have fun. 2 highly viral and controversial TikTok videos having to do with dating. So we will adjudicate those situations in the bonus episode, tyt.com/join to become a member.
Okay, so I had read a comment during one of the social breaks from C. Zerkley on Twitch. And I didn't get to the second half, and now they're accusing me of, why did you read only half my message? Because we ran out of time. Can you just for 1 second not assume the worst every single time, right? You literally saw us run out of time in that break. Anyway, the second half of the message was, I hate that word choice as well, referring to the issue about women, is that instead of using the word woman, saying birthing mothers or birthing people,
or people with uteruses.
People with uteruses. I hate that word choice as well, he says, but just effing add on trans men, but just add and trans men, and you all need to work on your way of inclusion. And it's not just myself asking this of you, thanks.
By the way, let me just address that real quick. I know you have your own thoughts. I actually floated that, like, can we say women and trans men? And people got real angry at me because they I don't know, they didn't like it, right? I wanna be inclusive. It is difficult, it's complicated. Again, I think a better phrase that is inclusive is people with the capacity to get pregnant, right? Because it doesn't boil you down to one body part or one bodily function,
well,
I guess.
I don't know, then maybe I'm going further than you. So look, guys, if you say it's only in clinical settings, great, no problem. In clinical settings, of course, you have to have a word that explains the entire category of people who can get pregnant, including trans men, of course, right? Is it only used in clinical settings? No, AOC is not a doctor and CNN is not a medical clinic. AOC uses it. I've seen other people use it in terms of a thing. If you say, hey, in the case of you mentioned rape, you can get pregnant. Absolutely, in that context, you can use it, you should use it. If you wanna, you're talking about trans people. Trans men wanna identify themselves a certain way. Of course, right? But if you're saying every time you say woman, you should say women and trans men. No, that's way too clunky, that's way too long.
And it also leaves out, why am I blanking on this? Say it. Why am I forgetting the word? Non-binary, my apologies. Yeah, it doesn't include non-binary, so it gets a little difficult, right?
I don't think you're saying that, by the way.
Yeah.
And so if, this might be all over nothing, which is usually what online social media nonsense is about, right? If you're saying use it in the context where if people can get pregnant, absolutely, absolutely. If you're saying every time you say woman, you should do like a half a sentence describing women and all the other people that it could apply to. No, that's not a realistic way of having a conversation. So that's the difference. We'll be back for the.
Hey everyone, Matteo Scarapore here, author of Black Buck, which is Shop TYT's first fiction book ever. I'm honored. So, Black Buck is about a young man named Darren who's living in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. He lives with his mom, he has his girlfriend, he has his best friend, he has his neighborhood, and his neighborhood has him. Darren's also working at a Starbucks in Midtown Manhattan. And one day, this man, real sweet,